We're giving you some start and sit calls next on Fantasy Football Today in 5. Welcome to FFT in 5. I'm Chris Towers here with Heath Cummings on the Thursday, September 8th episode. And that means that at least by the time you're listening to this in your podcast feeds, it's football time. We've got actual NFL football that's going to matter. It's going to count for your fantasy seasons on your TV, or, for me, I'll probably be watching it on a streaming device of some sort. But either way, we're going to be watching the Bills and the Rams. Do you have a lot riding on this game going into week 1?
I feel like my reputation has a lot riding on this game. Because
that's true of every game, though, isn't it?
I'm trying not to view it that way this season, but I just said it on the very first game day edition. So, yeah, I mean, Gabe Davis's performance. The funny thing is I think I have more Gabe Davis than any other Buffalo Bills player this year. But it's going to be – I'm really – like, one of the more fascinating things this year is, can running backs now come back from Achilles? And we're going to find out with Cam Akers and James Robinson, because Akers came back last year, but he wasn't Cam Akers.
Yeah, no, we saw him. He looked fine. My expectations are pretty muted for him, but I still think he will be the lead running back for the Rams. And I think I did end up with him in like 3 of my 14 leagues, which is not nothing. So no. I've got a decent amount riding on him. He ended up dropping to like the 6th round in a couple of later drafts, so it wasn't too hard to take that plunge. But what we're going to do here and every Thursday moving forward is I'm just going to go position by position and hit you with a couple of what I think are tough start-sit decisions that people might actually need to make. So we'll start out with quarterback, and how about a couple that we're hoping will be involved in some shootouts who, one of them stole the other one's lead wide receiver. Would you rather start Aaron Rodgers or Derek Carr for week 1? Aaron Rodgers going against the Vikings. Derek Carr's got the Chargers.
This may come down to the wire and how okay Alan Lazard is. But as of right now, we've still got Lazard projected to play. I have Aaron Rodgers projected for .04 more fantasy points than Derek Carr in this game.
So was that one passing yard?
One passing yard more than Derek Carr. It's the coin flip to end all coin flips. I think it's easy if there's no Lazard to start Derek Carr over Aaron Rodgers.
Are you starting any of the Packers wide receivers this week?
If Lazard, and we don't even know if he's hurt. So if it turns out that it was
it's
not
undisclosed.
An injury,
we'll find out today, I guess.
Right. If Lazard is okay and he's going to play, then I like him more this week than I did early in the year. I don't think the Minnesota secondary is going to be very good, and I think it will take a while for Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs to make an impact. I think especially week 1, we should expect 8+ targets from Alan Lazard. I'd start him as a number 2.
All right, let's move on to running back. And how about Ezekiel Elliott with a tough matchup against the Buccaneers, or Antonio Gibson with a pretty good matchup against Jacksonville? It's actually, Jacksonville wasn't as bad against running backs as you might think last season. I think they were like bottom 10 in points allowed, but still a better matchup than Tampa Bay. Who do you got, Antonio Gibson or Ezekiel Elliott?
I've got Antonio Gibson. He went from falling out of good graces to, maybe he's a top 12 running back in week 1. I just think there's going to be good volume there for him in a game that they should be ahead against a defense that may not be terrible, but is not good.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do have Ezekiel Elliott ranked lower than Antonio Gibson, so I'm there with you on that one. The one thing I'm interested in with Antonio Gibson is there was a lot of talk that this might have just been, he lost his job, so let's keep him happy. But there was a lot of talk of Washington wanting to get him the ball more in space as part of their thought process in giving Brian Robinson more of those early down and short yardage situations. So maybe Antonio Gibson will get a few more pass catching opportunities than he gotten in the past. But at the very least, I think you should expect what he's done the past few seasons until Brian Robinson's back. Let's go with a couple of AFC wide receivers. And this is an interesting one because Jalen Waddle, coming back from that leg injury, we expect him to play, but he's got a tough matchup against New England. Or Juju Smith-Schuster in what could very well be a big-time shootout in Arizona. But we got that quote from Patrick Mahomes today, apologizing in advance to fantasy players for how inconsistent the wide receiver usage in Kansas City is going to be. Are you buying that first, and then who would you rather start, Jalen Waddle or Juju Smith-Schuster?
I mean, is Patrick Mahomes just the nicest guy in the world, apologizing to fantasy managers because of something that hasn't even happened yet? It might happen. I would go with Waddle over Juju. I like the whole thing about the Patriots. They're supposed to take away your top option, right? well, Jalen Waddle's not their top option anymore. So like maybe he gets the lesser coverage. I'll go with Waddle just barely over Juju.
Yeah, for my I'm writing bold predictions for the Fantasy Football Today newsletter for Thursday morning for the season, and one of them is that no Packers or Chiefs wide receiver tops 900 yards this season. So I'm kind of all in on that just being an ambiguous mess in both situations. And before we go, we'll do one more. One streamer tight end to target in case George Kittle doesn't play. He did not practice Wednesday due to a groin injury. I know Tyler Higbee is a big favorite of yours, but he's playing on Thursday. Would you roll the dice on Tyler Higbee instead of George Kittle, or do you have someone else you want to stream?
No, I would definitely not roll the dice on him. I would probably look to either Evan Ingram or Gerald Everett. Either one of those guys, I think, should have a decent target share and a decent chance to score a touchdown. And speaking of practice reports, I just saw on Twitter that Chris Godwin was listed as a full participant. So
that is surprising. But does that mean like he was still wearing the non-contact jersey on Tuesday? Did he actually participate in practice in full? Was it a walkthrough? These are the kind of questions that we have that we can't really answer till later in the week. So we'll definitely have more on Chris Godwin later in the week here on Fantasy Football Today in 5, and we'll see you tomorrow.